the accelerator pedal for my personal growth is the amount of truth that I speak. So I ask myself the question quite a lot: how fast should we be driving this car at this moment of our relationship, given everything else that's going on and surrounding us?
Hello and welcome, fellow human. My name is Zachary Stockill, and you are listening to Humans in Love, a podcast that looks at culture, relationships, and personal development from unconventional perspectives. Join me as I dig into the question of how people like you and I might get more out of life and love. Thanks for being here. How you doing, friends? Hope your week is off to a good start and you're feeling good about getting back into the swing of things here in 2019. And I hope you're readjusted to work and all the rest. I'm trying to get out of holiday mode. I don't know what your experience has been of that, but it feels like once I get on a roll of drinking a little too much and going out a little too much and having a little too much fun, I find it really difficult to kind of settle back into a solid work routine. I feel like I've stretched this holiday break over for about 2 months, so hopefully I'll have a better routine set up soon. I hope your transition is going a little better than mine. I have a really good episode for you today, in my less than humble opinion. Today I'm joined by my good friend Jordan Luke Collier. You might remember Jordan's been on the show before. He is a coach with the Ars Amorata, basically an organization that at this moment in time helps men have better relationships with women. It's not a pickup company. I mean, that's what a lot of people would think when they hear me say that, but to call it that is really missing the point. They really stand out in a field of dating coaches and guys offering dating advice to other guys. They're offering something pretty unique and pretty special, and I have a lot of respect for their organization. It's really beautiful work that they do. Jordan and I have become friends over the past couple of years here in Chiang Mai, and last week we got together at my kitchen table for a discussion about 2019 and goal setting and setting priorities, and Jordan talks about his lessons over the past year and what he's learned, his new relationship, and we just kind of spitball back and forth, and it was a really fun discussion for me. Part one of the discussion you will hear today. Part two you will hear a little bit later. We're actually off next week because I'm traveling again. So I'll be off next week, but I'll be back with you in early February with the second part of this conversation. Before we get into it, I'll remind you that ratings and reviews are absolutely crucial for any podcast success, including this one. So if you dig Humans in Love, please let others know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Without any further ado, I present to you my friend, Jordan Luke Collier.
So if you enjoy this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, come and check out mine. It's at podcastwithnoname.com.
Yeah, we need to get a name for your podcast.
No Name Podcast.
No name. Jordan Luke Collier. Jordan Luke Collier Live. Jordan Luke Collier Tonight.
Tonight.
That's not bad, right?
Jordan Luke Collier in the morning.
Jordan Collier in the morning.
Collier at dawn.
That's my favorite. That's what it is. Collier at dawn.
Because that's where my best recordings are, you know. Like the aeroplanes go over late at night, but early in the morning there's no air traffic. For some reason, that's just the way they've configured the airport. So we get up in the morning and it's... there are some weird birds out in the forest.
Weird birds with Jordan.
There's the toothbrushing bird.
Oh, yeah, incessant.
It sounds like the neighbour's really brushing his teeth, as if his life depended on it.
Yeah, you live in a cabin in the mountain, pretty much.
Yeah. It's kind of the last cabin of Chiang Mai before, you know, the underworld.
The underworld.
The underworld.
Chiang Mai has an underworld. This is news to me.
Yeah, the mountain, you know, the undergrowth, the jungle.
Well, I told you we'd get you a name today, and I think Collier at Dawn is my favorite so far.
Oh, man.
It's pretty good. I want to know about New Year / goal setting and all that stuff. Do you like, because we're recording this in early-ish 2019.
Yeah.
Do you put any stock into New Year's resolutions or setting goals at the beginning of the year? Like, how do you look at that stuff?
Slightly.
Yeah.
I can tell you what I actually did.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, a lot of coaches, I'm a coach, right? A lot of coaches out there have got their whole methodology in their courses. And a friend of mine from Mexico once told me it's easier to write 12 volumes of philosophy than live your life by one single phrase.
That's well put, actually. Don't you think?
Yeah.
That's profound.
So I've got no ideas, but I can tell you what I did for New Year.
Let's hear it.
I was in Goa with my girlfriend. We went on this trip to India, basically. Spent Christmas and New Year's there. And I could feel the New Year's coming up. There's kind of an inner tension, like I know that it's coming, and there's the whole pressure of, 31st of December, we should be having a good night out with drinks and party and a good social life. And there's in me, there's an ongoing nag, like, this has to be one of the best party nights of the year. And if it's not, then, we screwed it up somehow.
Absolutely. You have to wait another year to make up for it.
Exactly. So that tension's kind of gnawing away in the background. So I can feel that New Year's coming. And then we were on the beach and we had a long day, from midday until sunset on the beach, which just gets exhausting, exhaustion from lying on a bed, basically, eating food and taking a quick dip in the sea. And we ended up going down for a walk along the beach, and the sun was setting, and it's gorgeous, it's like purple, pink sky, orange sun off in the background, gets a bit quiet. We went to a bit more of a secluded part of the beach, and in my own head I can hear all this kind of cynical thoughts of, like this is just another new year, and should be this, should be that, just like a collection of cynical thoughts is going off in my mind. And then at one point I realized what I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, stop that. What's actually happening right here, right now? And I'm with my girl and we turn and look at the sea. And I just say, stop for a moment. And I just wanted to get out of my tired, cynical mindset and just get present, and feel what's there. Because it's a charge, like whatever you think about New Year's Eve, it has a bit of a charge, We've lived our entire lives with all our associations to New Year and what that means, basically. So I'm like, well, let's just feel what is here now, a quick cheeky meditation, right, at sunset. And I look off directly at the sun, it's about to hit the water. And then I remember, okay, my girl is with me, I put my arm around her and we both look off to the sun. And it was literally, we both got right into that now. Be in the now, the here and now, that moment people eulogize. We just got right into that moment and felt it, and really felt what it was like to be with all those feelings of the new year coming and watch the sun going down. And so, what did I feel? I did some mental math. So I can't remember when we did our first, it was about this time last year, right? But
when you and I did our first podcast,
yeah.
I have to think now, probably about this time last year, yeah.
So I met my girlfriend at the end of January last year, and we basically got together pretty quickly. We had our first month of seduction, tussle, the whole story. But after that, we've been together, and I did the math, and I'm like, babe, the sun's setting. It's been 365 days. I think we shared a bed together on more than 300 nights. And to think that I didn't know you at this time last year is pretty phenomenal. Yeah. And yeah, there was a moment of real gratitude, like, wow, my head can chew over all the things that I failed in this year. That's very easy to do. Life's a kind of constant living failure. Who of us actually gets to manifest anything close to our highest aspirations, really?
Sure.
But we did this last year, we established this relationship, and we went from chaotic, unknown seduction territory all the way to quite a deeply secure base with each other, having lived and traveled in all these countries along the way, and the fights and the friction that we had to get there. It was a real deep moment of recognition. And so I thought, like, oh, do I have an intention? That's my gratitude for last year, and we're sharing that. Do I have a deep intention? And the only thing I could feel was, oh, next year I just want to have a sharper intention.
Sharper intention next year.
Yeah.
So you're planning a New Year's resolution for 2020?
No. I meant like in 2018 I had some intentions and projects, right? And I could feel like in my own intent where some of them got a little bit like sloppy or left behind, or where I got distracted, or where my attention got kind of dragged and pulled. And I'm like, okay, I've been through the fight of 2018. Here I am right now. What I most want for 2019 is whatever my intention is going to be, or whatever I end up doing. Just want my intention to be sharper, with a more kind of precise and crystal clear follow through. And that feels good. And I want to maybe go to one exotic place I've never been before. And I want to eat donuts. They make homemade donuts in this little donut specialty boutique donut shop in my town.
Lofty goals with Jordan Collier.
Yeah. But out of the...
Sorry, where is the donut shop? Now I'm curious. I love donuts.
It's in my town.
In England?
In my village. No, here in Chiang Mai.
Oh, in Chiang Mai,
up
okay.
in Pong Noi.
Well, we need to go then.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned this. This is the matcha donuts?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We need to go
outstanding.
There. Right.
But the simple delight, I think, is what I'm getting at, rather than complexify my next year with so many intentions that it's just impossible to even fit them in a schedule, and then try and work out some miraculous... had a beautiful coaching client one time who told me I've got a grand unification plan, like a personal development strategy that would unite everything in life, and just a grand plan for personal betterment, rather than setting myself up with all those kind of mental ego goals. Like there's something of just the simplicity of the moment that I wanted to get into more and more. I mean, that for me is quality of life over the course of this year. And if I can be fully with my donut as I eat it, and fully with my client as I talk to him, and fully with my girl, in the kitchen or in the veranda of our simple house, like that's kind of enough, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been thinking about this idea of simplicity as well. And like, it's a one surefire way, I think, to extend your life. Not in terms maybe of the actual years lived, but just how long a year feels, right? If you get lost in tasks and duties for a month or 2 months or a year, and we've all been there, like you wake up on a new year and think, where the hell did the past year go? And it feels like a blip. I mean, it's such a cliche, but I think a large, this is by no means an original or profound thought, but a big reason why that happens is because we get so lost in tasks and duties, and like, coming back to simplicity, like, I relate entirely to that. And I think that's a really beautiful goal for the new year, because, some of these, we were talking about gurus at lunch and people trying to sell you.
My favorite topic.
Yeah.
Spiritual gurus.
Well, I'd like to get back to that actually, but people trying to sell you these, and maybe it's just because like you and I think we're very similar in a lot of ways. Neither one of us are engineers, I'll put it that way. Our brains work in slightly different ways. And maybe some people really benefit from a plan, really detailed outline, and every day is scheduled to the minutes and all that stuff. And there's value in that for sure. But ultimately, I think simplicity is actually a really big goal for me in 2019. We'll see, because I feel like, God may laugh at me and throw me a bunch of shit that I'm not ready for. I think that's probably likely, but simplicity.
Do you have any other goals alongside simplicity?
For 2019?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you something odd. Like, every time I've set a financial goal, I've done it really twice, but I've been really strict about it and I've been really clear. It's been eerie because I've hit it like exactly. I mean exactly. Yeah. And now don't get me wrong, these are not enormous, lofty, huge, overambitious financial goals. But they're ambitious to an extent, and I've hit them exactly when I wanted to hit them. Yeah. So I do have a goal, like for my business and stuff. I've thought about that. I wrote it down. But when I did an exercise where I was just kind of journaling, okay, what do I want in 2019? Just kind of free, just letting things flow. And most of it was related to just lifestyle and personal things, like I want to lose more weight. I want to get in better shape. I want to spend more time on the bicycle. I want to explore a new relationship with my partner more. I want to go get closer to her. Things like that, ultimately, because that's where the real payoff lies, right? But yeah, this idea of simplicity, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to come clean a bit more about that. My only goal of the year, to say the only goal of the year is simplicity and eating donuts in the local village. No, I mean something's crystallized in me.
You live a simple life at 400 pounds.
Who's this donut eating idiot you've got on the podcast? What kind of?
Exactly.
No, I've got a serious kind of burning passion that I want to get out into the world. That's for sure. And I'm creating 3 different things. Courses, essentially. I want to create programs, experiences that men and women can go through which they can learn how to turn their relationships and their intimate encounters into something of wonder and awe, essentially. So someone replied to a post that I put out on Facebook this morning. It was a quote from Jung, and it's like, if you want to taste heaven, you got to taste the pits of hell. Yeah. Something like that. And it's like kind of journeys and experiences to fully taste the fullness of heaven, but also be brave enough to taste the pits of hell. Most people live their love lives in a kind of steady peacemaking middle without really tasting too much of either. And so there's something to be said about knowing the full extreme of humanity and loving all of that as a way of living and as a way of shaping our characters. Like that's a journey and a artwork and a mission that I'm caught up in very deeply. And so I'm creating different adventures that people can come on. You could call it a 13-week online course, but I want to really have it feel like a full body, spirit, emotional adventure where it's like, no, let's kind of launch into something here, practice completely different ways of showing up in our relationships with women and men in the world, stretch our edges and stretch our characters in a number of different directions, become more whole, complete people. So I'm writing that, and I think my big urge, as you know, I work with Zan and the Ars Amorata. That's kind of we're a bit of a pariah in the personal development world because we don't really care that much for personal development, even though people come to us and they're seeking learning, or some people want to fix some part of themselves. We see it as a way of creating culture, and which is I want to kind of lean much more strongly on art, poetry, literature, real life adventure as a way of building our life experience and our character so that we can have the experiences that we want.
Could you extract that a little bit more? Like, what do you mean, like leaning on art and poetry and culture? Well,
yeah. Zan said something very powerful, which is, in my day and age, there wasn't any self-help. The fact that we go to any airport in the world and they have the bestseller list and then they have the personal and business success kind of shelf in an even more prominent location says something about just how addicted people have become, or how attached people have become to becoming successes. And so there's a whole workshop culture, there's a personal development culture, there's a I want to fix myself, I want to work on myself culture, I want to better myself. And that's great, it's a symbol of where we are as a humanity, I guess, that people are wrapped up in this urge for learning. I mean, it's also a product of our economic times. Things are expensive, there's a lot of opportunity, but we think we've got to fight. And something that goes out the window very quickly in all of that is culture and beauty. And this is something we've had through, millennia. There's been whole swathes of society that have given themselves to create something beautiful. You might spend your entire life in one magnum opus, your great work, and it gets disseminated to the world, and that's a treasure of humanity, perhaps forever. how many of these self-help books are a treasure to anyone apart from the author, you know? Yeah. Really.
And how many, I mean, and it's a pretty young genre for sure, but how many of them actually last, right? We can think of, okay, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, How to Win Friends and Influence People. What else? You know, like they're very kind of, they have a moment for 5 or 10 years, generally speaking, and then they're never heard from it.
Well, those 2 books are from the 1920s, one from the 1940s.
30s, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and they're still going, you know.
They're still selling strong, yeah.
So, kind of been done in a way, you know. Everything else is a rehash, but what I want to say is, I mean, I say a lot of this from experience, but what I see men and women going through. And I heard a beautiful term for this the other day out in India. A guru was starting to talk about spiritual depression. I was like, dude, I can totally see that one in the women that I've dated over the last few years, in my own tendencies as well. The more someone kind of yearns and wants to grow spiritually, they can plunge themselves into the depths of practice, find themselves completely isolated, hiding from the world, giving up functional jobs, but jobs that gave a sense of belonging and satisfaction. And all of a sudden, they're in this kind of spiritual limbo, thinking that it's some kind of mystical experience or dark night of the soul that they're going through, but actually it's a feeling of being displaced and not belonging and not giving any gifts into the world. And there's an inherent dissatisfaction, you know, like I think most of us know if we do one day of volunteer work and touch someone, our gift has been given to somebody else, and we can sleep with a smile on our face when we go to bed at night. And so there's a lot of people missing that. You know, I want to take a week off and catch up on my self-help reading. You know, I want to take a holiday here and I just want to get through this list of books. I hear this kind of thing all the time. Well, for what? You know, you travel the world and you get through your reading list, but you know, you miss the world because your head was in self-development, working on yourself. And when you were reading these, I mean, most of these books are not fun, you know, however well written they are. And there's so much more, I think, that can be taken from film, from good film, from literature. The way that, I mean, if I think of something like 100 Years of Solitude, the way that will move things in my heart and my body and bring me solace and redemption and can echo some of my most personal sentiments in the print, like in the way that the author will talk about things. It's like, wow, there's something out here that understands me in a way that no one else does, and it talks about my life and it gives me something, and I can compare myself to the different moments that happened in the book and the different characters. And I think it's more profoundly healing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking of The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. Yeah. Have you read that? Like, so that one gave me some... it's cheesy maybe to say it gave me some answers, but in some ways it kind of shone a light on some dangers that if my life keeps going a certain way, this is what could happen, kind of thing. And that reading that novel for me, like, made me realize that in a way that perhaps a self-help book just couldn't, you know? I love that idea. Yeah, like getting more of these insights and these teachings and stuff from art, you know? I think that's beautiful.
They stay with us forever.
Yeah.
You know, a good work of literature, that the feeling that it gave, the angle that it gave, it doesn't just give us solace in the moment, but you might reflect on that in 60 years' time. It's that durable, a good piece of art.
Yeah, and I think that a similar experience with a self-help book can happen, but I think it's rare. It's more rare, you know? I can think of a very, very, very tiny handful of books that have impacted me, like a brilliant film or a brilliant novel. Yeah. Very, very small handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, a lot of the reasons why people go into self-help is to find connection again. And so if you're listening to audiobooks or podcasts such as this one, or if you're reading, those channels of information are quite thin. So, for example, if I'm involved in a lot of self-help, if I'm reading articles and doing my kind of coaching work, when I go out and meet people in the flesh, what have I got to give in my interactions with people? I've got conversation, I've got new ideas, I've got the ongoing narrative of my personal journey. And that's what people share and they talk about. So what I've noticed, the more I kind of go into spiritual communities, or I, date women or have friends who do a lot of this stuff, that they're on a journey of personal development. The conversations are really based around our personal development. What latest insights? What have we learned? How's your practice going? Blah, 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 blah. We might talk about these kind of psychological or spiritual concepts, or business concepts or whatever. And it's an exchange of ideas along one channel. But these kinds of pastimes, ways of spending our times, they don't generally help us become more playful, more witty, more imaginative. They don't help us to kind of touch or feel more in our bodies most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember very clearly having a moment when I was living in Colombia where I was just absorbing all the self-help I could take, books about success in business and, just personal success and, how to win friends and influence people, like I mentioned before, and all this stuff. And I remember having a very clear moment at one point, realizing like, I'm becoming really boring, I'm quote unquote becoming more successful, but I'm probably kind of a drag to talk to at this point, because I only want to have these very intellectual, personal development focused conversations, and I'm probably becoming insufferable in some ways. And then I remember I took like 6 months where I just read novels and I watched films that had nothing to do with it. And it was like, okay, I need some balance here. Like I told you, I had that moment recently, actually. I was looking at my Kindle last night, just scrolling through the last 20 books that I've been through. And it's like, okay, Zach, it's time to get some more, not less serious, that's the wrong word, but just more fiction, just plain and simple, because it's such a relief and a pleasant experience coming back to that when you've been so focused on, personal development and self-help for so long. Like we were talking at lunch, like I'm really curious, like not when can you take a break from that stuff, but is there a point when enough is enough? Like Alan Watts always said about psychedelics, when you get the message, hang up the phone, right? Yeah. You don't need to keep taking it over and over and over and over again. And I'm sure you've found too, a lot of these books and a lot of the speakers that people like you and I are drawn to, there's tremendous value in each of them, but a lot of it comes down to a lot of the same message being repeated over and over again. Yeah. You mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier, who's having this big moment. Yeah. He's a very, very, very good speaker. I've read his book. I enjoyed his book. But a lot of this stuff these are old messages, which he would be the first to concede, by the way. These are old messages that have been kind of lost. But once you get that message, is it enough to because you can use personal development, self-help as a crutch, right? Like I don't really have to start working on my business or starting this new business until I read X number of books, right? I can't really launch my podcast until I have the perfect name.
Hey, don't wangle me into the bucket here, Zach.
No. I just want to see your podcast on iTunes. But anyway, that's another matter. But like, what are your thoughts? Because it sounds so arrogant for me at 31 years old to be like, well, I've read everything I need to read about this. I'm done. Of course, I don't believe that. I have so much more to learn. But how much more do I have to learn from reading another personal development book at this particular stage in my life? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're coming to kind of a similar place in your own life.
Unless it's a really good book.
Unless it comes highly recommended and all my friends are reading it, and it's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite term for this is the self-completion project. And I'm borrowing this off other people, it's not my own. Okay. The self-completion project, once I read this list of books and do these trainings with the teachers I like, then I'll be complete. Right. And then I'll be able to live my life.
Right. So, that's a good way of putting it. It's like deferred living your life.
Exactly.
That's real well put.
So, my whole beef about culture and literature and, actually sharing in it and enjoying the donut and the sunset with the girl that's beside you or whatever, it is saying actually live life already. But deferring life, that it is pretty insidious. It can get pretty difficult. It's basically saying stop the fundamental activity of your ego and just snap out of it. But when we can actually start, I asked the question, And I'm in it, you know. I think this is why simplicity is my goal of the year, because it's like, you know, if I take my eye off that prize, stop, you know, really being grateful for the amazing lifestyle that surrounds me. If I take my eye off that prize, which I've already got and I've already won, and all of us have got that in a certain way, you know, even if you hate your life, there's still tremendous beauty in it. If you can learn how to see it, it's already around us. But I can quickly fall back into another self-completion project. You know, I've got my Kindle collection with 400 samples like everybody else.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I go on Facebook and I see a long post and I save it for later, you know, just because I want to read something easy, you know, I want it to be light. Like everybody else, I've got these patterns of the mind that... But the essence that I want to say is, once you've finished your self-completion project, then how are you going to live your life?
Like, what are you waking up for in the morning?
Yeah, like say Zach is done, or say podcast listener, wherever you are, say you're done if you've had this habit.
You've peaked.
Yeah. Then what do you do with your mountains of time that you're not invested in working in yourself anymore?
But then it's like, you know, because I use this language all the time as well, you know, working on yourself, and you're always a work in progress and stuff. But it's like, where's the danger between becoming obsessed and consumed by that project and not living your life? You know, and not even not living your life, that sounds glib, but not allowing yourself to fully enjoy your life. Maybe that's a better way of putting it, you know? Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but I guess I've just been thinking about this. Like, does it make sense sometimes just to take a real break from consuming all of this, you know, personal development material and all the rest? Does it make sense to take some time away from that sometimes and kind of just be where you're at for a while? Because, I mean, this is another cliche, but growth is going to happen naturally. You're going to learn things naturally, whether it's someone coming into your life or having a good conversation with a friend or whatever. Like, it's going to happen naturally. But is it a good idea sometimes to, you know, not go on that retreat, or not run off to India, you know, on the spur of the moment, or not read that new book that everyone's telling you to read or whatever, and just kind of, I hate to say be content with where you're at, but kind of take some time to just pause and enjoy where you're at for what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, try and accept it.
Yeah.
I mean, we work-wise, we work with men who want to get better with women, essentially, whatever phase of their love life they're in. But there's a lot you can do if you make some tweaks and changes, and especially if you change your lifestyle and get out there in the dating game. You know, if you're more aware going into the dating game, you can learn and grow tremendously quickly. But who you are as a man, your character, the kind of etchings of life on your face and in your posture, the rasp in your voice, the life lived, like everything that comes through you that communicates, fuck, this is a compelling, dynamic man. Like, if you want to be more attractive, you got to have some life experience in you, really. You can't get that quickly. It's kind of the turning of the years and the decades.
Yeah.
There's some work we can do with a guy in his early 20s, but the rest of it is like, dude, just set off on your trajectory, check in with us when you're 45, and you're going to be compelling like you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Life is going to develop us, it's true. And I got caught up in a ladder of something. I started to get into developmental psychology a few years ago. This is fascinating because there is kind of... psychologists have found that there is a hierarchy of different abilities and skills that come online as we grow psychologically. And if we get into the kind of higher levels, quote unquote, we can start to do some really, really cool stuff. We get an intuition that's off the hook. We become super empathetic and aware. We get to be able to understand everybody's perspective and then not judge or just be really elegant in conflict. We be able to become able to see into the future and feel, you know, is this going to work with my team, or is it not going to work with my team? Or there's so many tremendous gifts that come online. And so I thought for a while, wow, I should try and climb up the stages to get there, you know? And that can be one of the biggest traps. Like, I want to grow faster than I'm actually able to grow. And you'll get there for, if you kind of set sail in a good direction, you'll get there for free anyway. You know, age will take care of so much of that stuff. But in the moment, it's like, fuck, I want to be in the next stage because right now it's not the best one, and I want to be in the best one because that's going to give me this, that, and the other. And oh man.
Let's pause there for a minute, because like we're talking about, you know, the new year and stuff. Like, if you had to boil it down, what do you think you learned in 2018? How are you different today than how you were, say? Because I think you're right. I think the first conversation we had for this podcast was about a year ago. If you had to say, how do you think you're different compared to then? What have you learned? What did 2018 teach you?
So much.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
The relationship has been the biggest thing. Because I was very, very single with no...
Not just a little bit single.
Extremely single. Like, no leash, you know, no home, no dog kennel in the garden.
Yeah.
You know, I was completely free and roaming wild. So to go from that to be really monogamous, you know, like living together, we've not spent a night apart for months and months now.
And it was a pretty quick transition too. I remember watching that transition. Like, you guys were very together very quickly.
2 or 3 months, and then, you know, magnetized. I mean, that's been transformative beyond all measure, because at every juncture I've had to, you know, recognize my habit of independence. And so if I want someone in my life, I've had big questions of sacrifice and slowing my own pace down, and maybe relinquishing some things along the way, and watching my own mind. This is why meditation's been a beautiful thing to get at least a little bit of a grasp on, because I have all these thoughts in my mind like, oh, fuck, Jordan, get out of this, you know, what are you doing? And I might have followed some of those thoughts in the past, like, and now I watch the thoughts, and some slight bits of doubt cross my mind about whether I should be in it or not, and oh no, that I mean, that's not true. Let it go by and continue going deeper and deeper into the relationship. Not everyone's built like me. I'm kind of acutely sensitive to intimacy and the things that happen with me in connection with other people, especially women, which is a beautiful skill, but it's also been a curse over the years. You know, if something feels a little bit stifling or suffocating, I've, you know, wanted to get out of there. That's been my go-to. And so I felt like every doubt, every fear, every step of the way, every question mark, every kind of nuance of should I be in this relationship or not, every bit of possible sabotage that's popped up in my system, I felt very acutely, and I've grappled with it, looked at it, let it go, brought it to the table, and whatever, and it's all kind of ended up going fine. But just that transition from being completely so independent and so single to be completely in it and navigating is kind of like a ski run with all these obstacles along the way. I could have been tripped up or bailed out or fallen over at one of 100 different junctures, but just kind of going down that ski run and landing somewhat, you know, without broken bones so far, that's been one hell of a learning. And I think, it feels like it's a great service that I can give to other people.
What do you mean?
Like, for those looking for intimacy, but that are somehow trapped in their own created, their own kind of isolation or their own sense of autonomy and independence. They've created such a sense of independence in themselves that they struggle to come close to another. Like, just going through that process can be really, really hard, especially when you're in your 30s. You've got a solid sense of purpose. You know where you want to go. You don't want to compromise. You've got a strong personality. You meet someone else with a strong personality. I mean, you know, the fashion these days is that man and a woman get together, and if they live together, they want to design their own house where they've got bedrooms at opposite ends of the house. You know, everyone wants their space to such an extent that we're really individuals. And the notion of a couple is, you know, belongs to a different culture or a different time in the history. We're kind of, you know, contracts bringing together powerful individuals who are immensely separate. I mean, that film, was it La La Land?
Yeah.
Oscar winner, I think.
Yeah, with Ryan Gosling and that one.
Yeah. It talks about that beautifully. You know, like let's have an arrangement when we're both feeling romantic feelings towards each other. We can have an arrangement together that's going to have us solve our needs, give us some romance, stop our loneliness. But as soon as a shiny career opportunity that comes our way that's going to help us better ourselves, like goodbye love and relationship, like my narcissism rules. That's what a lot of us are struggling with, I think.
Yeah. And at the same time, so often, you know, failing to acknowledge that what's really important, you know, like the things like your, you know, colleague Zan talks about a lot. What's really important on your deathbed? What are you really going to remember? What are the major decisions that you're going to remember in life? You know, it's not the promotion. You know, it's cultivating these relationships. You know, It's conversations like this. You know, it's like this is the stuff that really matters in the end. You know?
Yeah, I wrote a post about this, and I got another one that I want to put out soon. But it's those moments where we said goodbye and cried in the airport because we didn't know if we were going to see each other again. And all the motorbike rides we went on out in the country, and those easy afternoons. But there was a couple of moments where we said goodbye and we didn't know if we would see each other again, and just, you know, bawling with tears at the airport, like that kind of thing. Like that's the donut eating moment. You know, it doesn't get any better than that.
Donut eating moment. That's the name of your first book for sure.
Oh man.
I want to come back to something you said earlier, because I've been thinking about this as well lately. Like, I always think of that David Data quote, like, if you're in a good relationship, the worst, most hellish stuff you can imagine is going to come up. Do you think it's necessary to go through really dark, really intense, really challenging times with your partner in order to experience the other end of that? Do you think that that's necessary? Can you have one without the other?
Wow. I wouldn't want to come on and be absolutist about this. Yeah. I suspect so. I don't know.
And
Maybe
I think it's
got a different story.
And I think it's easy for people like you and I to assume, or for anyone to assume, that like their experience is similar to other people. But some people just don't want that, you know, and I respect that. Some people don't want those really intense, really, you know, miraculous highs in a relationship because they fear the lows too much or whatever. You know, some people don't want that wide range of emotional experiences.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, some of that can just be like drama and
of course.
An addiction
well, that's
to intensity.
It. And that's what I've been wondering about. It's like, you know, because it's easy to take that quote, you know, okay, if you're in a great relationship, if you're in a healthy relationship, whatever word you want to use, you know, there's going to be some seriously dark shit that's going to come up. It's easy to take that and use that as an excuse for, okay, well, this drama is, you know, whatever, this is okay because we're in a good relationship, right? It's like, what's the line like you were talking in a recent talk with Zan about, you know, the dark side. Like, when is it productive? When is drama productive? You know, and this is an impossible question to answer, but I've been wondering about this lately. Like, and where do you draw the line between, you know, the fights or the conflict or the disagreements that are necessary for the growth of the relationship and unnecessary drama and suffering?
Yeah.
You know, I don't have an answer.
Well, I think,
not sure.
Yeah. I think it depends on the intention and the capacity of the two people in the relationship. Some people want to use their relationship as a crucible for growth. Some people literally are like, hey, you know, I'm on a tantric path. I want to meet every single challenge that comes in my way, and I'll burn in the fire of every conflict because there's, you know, shadow to integrate or something to understand. We can do psychological work every single day. I've been in relationships where it's like literally being in a workshop. I've done more work in one day of relationship than I do in a week retreat. And I subsequently found that, one, not everyone's got either the desire, the capacity, the wish to have a relationship like that. And two, I found also that the accelerator pedal for my personal growth is the amount of truth that I speak. So I ask myself the question quite a lot: how fast should we be driving this car at this moment of our relationship, given everything else that's going on and surrounding us?
Can you say that again? Because I thought that was great. The accelerator pedal. Say that again.
The accelerator pedal of your personal growth is the amount of truth that you speak.
Wow. Yeah, that's some radical honesty stuff right there.
Right. So yeah. I love a bit of radical honesty, right? But if you're driving at 100% foot down on the accelerator, you'll crash before your car reaches any kind of destination.
You'll hit a lot of other people.
And I've done it. Yeah. Being in the kebab shop late at night, everyone looks over at you and, what's going on here? But like every single conflict boils up and it's like, no, we've got to look at this. No, you don't have to. You can let a lot of them go. And so I think that...
that's so important. You're right. Yeah.
Show up and speak your truth. Be courageous in your vulnerable. These are all the big personal development messages of the day. And it's good because people weren't speaking their truth. We've had a unspoken social contract to be hush-hush all the time between us. Canadians, English.
Yeah. Basically anyone with the queen on their money. Yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
If you got the queen on your money, you're down for a lifetime of suppression unless you can find a way out of it, unless you hit high seas. But yeah, show up, speak your truth. Great. It's an evolution, but after a little while, it's like, well, no, let's take the foot off the gas a little bit. Like, what's the optimum weight in which my foot hits that pedal? It's not full on.
There you have it, my friends. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Jordan. We always seem to have really good discussions, and you can hear the second part of that discussion in early February when the podcast returns. So be sure to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And while you're at it, why not leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Another reminder that you can find show notes and links to everything we talked about at humansinlove.com. Thanks for listening, friends. I will talk to you in 2 weeks. In the meantime, remember that life is short, far too short, to not have yourself a grand old time. Talk to you soon, friends.